All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I would just like to welcome everybody to the annual CANR New Faculty Orientation. And we're gonna just kind of do an informal presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat, or you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question. I think Courtney's going to advance the slide. There we go. We're good. All right. So we are the Office of Research Support, and we provide pre-award support to the faculty in the College of Ag and Natural Resources. Our office was started in 2011, and we currently have 4 staff, myself, Courtney, Lynn, and Annie. So what will our office do for you? So we will go ahead and read through the entire solicitation. We're going to develop a checklist and a calendar for you. We will start your proposal development document in the MSU Research Administration System. We will prepare your budget, assist with your justification. And then if you have any subawards that are a part of your proposal, we will go ahead and reach out to those subawards to collect all the documents that we need from them. We will also review all of your proposal documents to make sure that we are in compliance with the requirements of the solicitation. We will serve as your liaison with the Office of Sponsored Programs and other departments and colleges on campus. We will upload your final proposal documents to whatever proposal system that is needed for the solicitation. We do assist with domestic and international proposals. We do not assist with proposals less than 100,000, fellowships, internal or commodity proposals, after the fact, or modifications to awarded projects. Now, with that being said, right now we have some departments that do not have adequate pre-award staff or have special circumstances. So we are providing more assistance to those units. So this is just an example of a checklist. This is for an NIH R01 proposal. And you can see here, we're going to list all the documents that are required for the proposal. And then we will also list the page number in the guide so that if you want, you can find out more information specific to that document. At the bottom, we will also list any specific formatting requirements that are required for the proposal. This is an example of a calendar that we would send to you. Now you'll see that we have listed if there is a subaward, when we would need those documents, when we would need to work on the MSU budget, and when it's due to OSP for their review. We also will list when we need the final documents from you so that we can route the PD in the system for approvals. And then when the proposal is due to the Office of Sponsored Programs. And then we will also list the agency due date. Now, all of these dates, Annie is going to cover later in more detail as to why we have these dates listed the way that we do. So this is just a snapshot from our website. So in order to request our assistance, we would ask that you go to the website, and over on the left, you can see there's a purple box that says proposal request form. We would ask that you click on that, and then it will advance you to the snapshot that you see on the right. And these are just going to ask you for information that we need in order to get your proposal started in the system. And then I also want to point out in the snapshot on the left under the College of Ag and Natural Resources up at the top, you'll see that there are 4 tabs. We're currently on the pre-award tab, and then right next to it is the waivers tab. And yep, right there. And that is what I'm going to talk about next. But I wanted to point that out so that if you did need to do a PI, co-PI exception or FNA waiver, this is where you would go to get the link for that. Okay, so the PI, co-PI exception and FNA waiver requests are now automated in an online system for the College of Ag and Natural Resources. So individuals with appointment titles of assistant professor or higher are eligible to serve as PI or co-PI on any solicitations. But other positions such as research associates, postdoc fellows, specialist, visiting, or adjunct faculty, they're not eligible. And so they would need to request PI or co-PI exception. Now, with that being said, there are fellowship opportunities out there. And those research associate or postdocs, they do not need to request PI or co-PI exception for those fellowship opportunities. So the PI or co-PI exception has to be obtained and approved before the proposal is submitted. And the person that is initiating the request would go ahead online, fill out the form, and then it is automatically routed to your department chair. And then once the department chair has reviewed, then it will go to our office and the Associate Dean of Research, and then on to the Office of Research and Innovation. And they are the ones that determine the request. And then once they've made their decision, then an email will be sent to everybody notifying them of ORI's decision. So an FNA waiver or reduction request. So FNA is also known as indirect costs or IDC. And obviously this is a major component of the budget. And unless it is specifically identified in the solicitation or by the sponsor that they have an actual written policy, you would be using MSU's negotiated rate for calculating the FNA in a proposal budget. So if there is a reason to request a reduced FNA rate or waiver, then you need to go ahead and the same thing, you would fill out the online form, and then it would, similar to the PI or co-PI request, it is going to route to the department chair, to ORS and the dean, and then also to the Office of Research Innovation. Now, we have listed here that it's recommended that you submit it about 6 weeks prior to the deadline. With the online automated system now, we are looking at closer to 3 or 4 weeks for those to get through the system. But I will also add that ORI does not frequently grant FNA waiver reductions or requests. You do need to provide a really good justification for that. All right, so now Annie is going to go ahead and cover the proposal submission deadline policy.
Thanks, Lori. I'm Annie Beswas, and I'm part of the AgBioResearch team. I will talk about the deadline policies for proposal submission in our office. If you decide to submit a proposal in response to a solicitation, we ask that you submit a proposal request form as soon as you know, at least 30+ business days before the deadline, if possible. We will respond to you. We get those proposal request forms on our mailbox, and one of us will respond to you within 1 business day. Again, when we respond to the request, we will send you a calendar of deadlines that Lori showed you in one of the previous slides that will have the due dates highlighted. If you mentioned on the form that you'll have a subrecipient organization on your proposal, we will also need some documents from them that are budget justification, statement of work, and subrecipient commitment form. These organizations, like us, have their own internal controls. They will need their own approvals to finalize these documents. So typically we would request about that they turn in those documents to us 12 to 15 business days before the submission deadline. Now, within those 12 to, after those 12 to 15 days, when we get the proposals for the documents from the sub-award, we will also work with you, the MSU PI, to finalize the budget. There will be a few back and forths, and hopefully 8 business days before the deadline, we will have a final budget and a justification that is ready for OSP review. At that time, we also ask that you provide us with either a draft project summary or an abstract or a statement of work to go with the justification and the budget. Once OSP reviews and approves the budget, about 5 business days before the submission deadline, we will need to upload documents, final documents, to the portal. So final documents can be a combination of any of these, the narrative, abstract, biographical sketches, any of these. What you do is you provide us with the final documents, we upload those to the portal. And that is 5 business days before the deadline. Once we do that, we are able to route your PD for MSU approvals. What that means is it's going to go through the different departments and gather approvals. 3 business days before the deadline, the proposal should be with OSP to be considered on time. At this point, OSP can come back with questions or concerns, and we will work with you to fix any issues. So 3 business days before the deadline, that's an on-time proposal when it is with OSP. 1 to 3 business days before the deadline, OSP will submit the final proposal to the agency. Hopefully at this point, they have determined that it's all good, it's ready to submit. So 1 to 3 business days before the deadline, they'll go ahead and submit it. Now, what are late proposals? Proposals are considered late if they are submitted to OSP less than 3 full business days before the submission deadline. OSP also has a queue of proposals, and the ones that are on time are given precedence. So we do not want to be late. We want to have those proposals to OSP before 3 full business days. At-risk proposals, and I'll tell you right at the outset, we don't get a whole lot of these, not at all. So what are at-risk proposals? These are proposals that are submitted within 8 hours of the submission deadline, which is often the morning the proposal is due to the agency. Now, your proposal must be endorsed by your chair and the research dean. Your chair will email the research dean, and we will be CC'd on the email. They need to put the proposal due date, the PI's name, the proposal development number, explanation as to why the proposal is late, and other information that would help the research dean to make his decision. If your at-risk request is granted, OSP will be notified, and they will go ahead and submit your proposal. So, in summary, 30+ business days, send us the proposal request form. We will respond to you and we can get started. 12 to 15 business days before the deadline, the sub-award documents and MSU budgets are due to us so that we can start finalizing the documents. 8 days before the deadline, we turn in the documents for budget review. 5 days before the deadline, we submit all of the proposal documents and we route the PD for approvals. 3 days before the deadline, hopefully our proposal is with OSP at this time and it is considered on time. 1 to 3 business days, OSP will submit the proposal. Proposals are late if they're submitted to OSP less than 3 business days before submission, so 1 or 2 days before the due date. If they are with OSP within 8 hours, they are labeled at risk and need approval from the research team before they can be submitted. Over to you, Courtney.
Thank you. All right, now we are going to jump into MSU's research administration system, which is called COI Research, or we'll refer to that as CANR quite a bit. So anytime you're working on a proposal development document must be created in the COI Research system. And this is to capture an internal record of each proposal that's submitted. And it will have all the sponsor information, your project dates, all the key personnel that are going to be part of your project, any regulatory information. So this is like your human subjects, your vertebrate animals. It will contain your budget. And then we route that once everything's in place for institutional approvals. So it's all electronic. Our office, if you are working with us, we will prepare and route that when we start the process with you. There are quite a few questions that we'll probably ask you at some point, just based on the fields that we need to complete before we can route it. And I do want to note a PD is required as part of every proposal you guys submit at MSU. So if you guys are out communicating with agencies or anything, just reach out to one of us and we will start a PD, because we want to get that in place before any funding or awards arrive at MSU. And that way we've covered all our bases. So this is kind of a snapshot of a proposal development document. Again, you guys don't have to fill this out, but you will see it at some point once we route it. A lot of these fields are on this screen are captured on that proposal request form that you guys submit to our office. So we'll take that request form and fill this out for you. And then once we start working with you, we'll kind of reference each proposal by a PD number. So whenever you're working with us, we'll probably have in our subject line PD, blah, and list the number out. And each proposal that you guys submit will have a different number. So navigating through these tabs, over on the left-hand side there, this is going to capture all of your proposal project info. So the next one is key personnel. So this is going to be anybody who's participating in your project. It can be faculty, specialists, or postdocs, and it's going to include people with the role of principal investigator, which would be the lead PI, co-principal investigators, co-investigators, and then any senior or key personnel. And then also we'll include, like if you have a subaward on there, we'll add them to our system and they will pull in here depending on the agency that we're applying to. Within the key personnel tab, there's a subsection, and that is for the credit allocation. This used to be referred to as the credit split. And then we'll also, oops, sorry about that. We'll also complete the post-award unit, and if you guys have a space profile, those are pretty rare, but if you had a lab or something in another department, then you would have a space profile set up. So the MSU personnel included on that first personnel section, all those individuals will be brought in here, and we will pull them in with their appointment. So this is the funding lines that fund your salary, and it will break it down right here. Anybody who's included here, so on the previous slide, anybody who's included with a PI, co-PI, co-investigator role, they will automatically be pulled in here and will be required to approve the PD once we route it in the future. And then key personnel, we have the option to add them here. So if you tell us that they should be included in the credit allocation, then we can manually add them. I will note there's no set policy at MSU regarding if they should be included. If not, a lot of faculty kind of determine the credit allocation and if they should be included here based on their level of effort on the project. So each proposal will likely be different. Okay, the credit allocation. This is kind of confusing, especially if you're brand new to MSU. But this will allocate a portion of the FNA or those indirect costs from your project, and it will distribute that back to the departments and the colleges. So it distributes it back to the departments and the actual college in which the funding lines are, however they're listed. Whoever's on your project, it will distribute it accordingly. And then we have to allocate it based on these percentages right here. And that's something we will ask you for. We can kind of give you a little guidance, but again, there's no set policy on how to determine the allocation. And then the total just must equal 100 down here. So let's say you had 4 people on your project. Some people will allocate it just 25% even split, but you could also do 90 and then 2.5 or 5 or whatever you decide, just kind of based on the level of effort or contribution that those individuals will be devoting to your project. So once we have everything in place, we will route the proposal for approvals. So this comes after your budget's approved and everything like that. So it will route to all the project personnel that are listed on that first key personnel tab. And then once everybody in that section approves, it will route to all of the departments. So each department for all of those key personnel. So if you're in plant soil and you're working with somebody in entomology, it would route to each of those departments. And then also it will route to the colleges. And then any special approvers. So this might be, I keep doing that, I'm so sorry. International activities, things like that. And then depending on your sponsor, it might route to OPB. That's kind of rare, and then after that, it will route to either Office of Sponsor Programs, Business Connect, or Contracts and Grants Administration. Most of the time it's going to be Office of Sponsor Programs, but depending on your sponsor, if it's a for-profit entity, it will route to Business Connect, and we will work with the appropriate office. You guys don't have to remember that. And then Contracts and Grants. And it will not route to the next level. So until all the departments approve. So if plant soil has approved and entomology still needs to approve, it's not going to route to the colleges until everybody in that section has signed off. Excuse me. So once we route the proposal for approvals, it's going to route to you guys as PIs, and you will receive an email from the CANR system, and it will have a link in there that you guys can just manually click, and it will open the proposal for you. And this is the screen that will open. It's on the proposal summary tab, and you can navigate through each of these tabs if you wish, and just verify that everything's correct. A lot of times, one of the things that we will see that needs updating is the proposal title. So whatever you guys submit on that request form, we plug that into the PD, and then a lot of times we're either not notified that a title has updated, and just email whoever you're working with and we can have that updated. And then just navigate through the individual tabs. You know, you can look at the attachments and see what we have uploaded. And that will be your review, and then you can click approve. And this is kind of what it will look like. At the bottom, it will have approve and return. We will have all these buttons. These are the most commonly used ones. We obviously want you to click approve. Return will indicate that corrections need to be made to the PD, and then we have to go in and reset the route. So if you do have any questions upon your review, then just feel free to notify whoever you're working with before you click any of the other buttons. And then after you have approved a PD, the system will prompt you to complete your project-based COI disclosure. And Lynn is going to get into the conflict of interest section.
Great, thanks, Courtney. So before I start, I just wanted to put up this link to the COI office. So I'm going to go through some general information, but you know, we are not experts on what may or may not be considered a financial conflict of interest, but there's a lot of good information on the COI website. So I have that link here, and I'll refer to it a bit in the coming slides as well. Okay, so just very generally, a conflict of interest, I'm sure we all know this. So where a person may have a personal interest that could influence or bias their professional judgment. And so their actions, motives may be called into question because of these competing interests. And financial conflict of interest obviously involves a financial interest that could affect your design, conduct, or reporting of your research. So in this context, we're talking about significant financial interests. So anything that's related to your MSU responsibilities that exceeds $5,000 within a calendar year. And this applies to not only your personal interests, but also those that may be held by your immediate family or any legal entity that you or your family owns or controls. So it's really important that these financial interests are disclosed to MSU, and this is done through the Research Administration portal, so through the CANR system as well. Okay, so this is a list of examples of things that need to be reported. This is more for your information. I'm not going to go through these in detail. Again, if you go to the Conflict of Interest website, they have a really good FAQ section that kind of walks through common financial interests that you would want to disclose. But this list is just here for your reference, and you guys have the slides, so you can refer back to them if needed. And again, this is a list of sort of common things that don't need to be reported. So for example, you know, seminars, lectures, teaching engagements, those things don't necessarily need to be reported. MSU salary obviously doesn't need to be reported. Again, you can refer to the FAQ section on the Conflict of Interest website, which I've just put the link at the bottom there. Okay, so conflict of interest training. As of August of 2012, conflict of interest training is required if you are planning to apply or if you have funding from any PHS agency. So there's a list of PHS agencies at the link there in the slide. The ones that pop up in my head, obviously the most common one is NIH. CDC is also a PHS agency. I think FDA, and there's a few other ones that we don't see as commonly. The most common one obviously is NIH. So MSU has an online training program through the Office of Regulatory Affairs. So this online training is about 20 minutes long, and there's a link here in the slides. So PHS researchers are required to do this, and the training should be renewed every 4 years. So others, even if you don't plan on applying to a PHS agency, it's not required to complete the training, but it may be helpful. You know, if you think you might have a financial interest that you need to disclose, it might just be helpful to anyone who will be completing a disclosure. So there's really two types of disclosures that you'll need to complete. The first is the annual disclosure, and then the second is a project-based disclosure. So first, for the annual disclosure, so all MSU faculty and academic staff with research, teaching, outreach, service, institutional responsibilities will need to complete an annual disclosure. And also other individuals who might not be academic staff, but might be involved in research or other sponsored projects should also be completing an annual disclosure. So this can be done at any time, and it must be recertified every 12 months from the most recent disclosure. So again, this is done in the CANR system. So I've just shown a screenshot here on the left. So this is sort of the login page, and you can see at the top there's a COI link. So if you click on that, it will bring you to the conflict of interest module, and there's a blue button where you can update your disclosure. So you just click that blue button, And then you'll see this first screen pop up on the top here. And so there's 3 options, and you want to make sure that the complete new annual disclosure or upload existing disclosure button is checked off, and then you just hit next. And so this is going to bring you to questions regarding your financial or potential financial conflicts of interest. So if you have no conflicts to disclose, I think there's 2 questions only here. So just review the questions, and if you have nothing to disclose, you would just hit no, and then you just hit next. And then in the 3rd screenshot on the bottom of the slide, it will bring you to the certification statements page. And so you just review these statements, and if you agree with those, you just click submit, and then you've completed your your annual disclosure. So if you do have conflicts that need to be disclosed, so on the previous slide where you clicked on no for anything to disclose, you would just click yes, and then it brings you to this. So the top screenshot here, it will bring you to this screen, and this is just where you enter the information for any of the financial entities that you want to disclose. So you start just by clicking the add info button, and then a pop-up box will appear where you just enter the information for the financial entity. And if you haven't completed everything properly, it won't let you move on. So there's required fields in there, and it's pretty obvious when you go to complete it. If you have more than one financial entity to disclose, you just hit add line. So I've marked it as number 2 on that slide, and you can add in additional entities as needed. And then once you're finished adding all of your entities, you just click next. And again, it will bring you to the certification page, again, shown on the bottom screenshot there in that slide. And then you hit submit. And then your annual disclosure is complete, and it will be reviewed by the Conflict of Interest Office. And so now those financial entities that you've added are in the system. And I'll show you when you go to do your project-based disclosure, they should be there as well. Okay, so the project-based disclosure, this needs to be completed for every proposal that you're submitting. And again, this is all tracked in the CANR system. So again, who needs to complete the project-based disclosure? Anybody who's listed on your proposal, so all PIs, co-investigators, co-PIs, any key personnel that are listed on the PD will need to complete a project-based disclosure. So this includes any fixed-term, tenure-track professors, postdoc fellows, research associates, any specialists, research or extension specialists that may be on the project. All of these individuals will need to do a project-based disclosure. If you're working with anybody outside of MSU, they will also need to complete a conflict of interest for the project. If you're working with somebody at another university, you know, the vast majority of the time they have their own conflict of interest policies, and so that is captured at their own institution. Sometimes if you're working with people who may, you know, if you're working with an industry partner or somebody else who's not at a university, you may need to collect a conflict of interest form for them. And that is just like a PDF form that we complete and we attach to the PD. And then it's there for MSU records that they've completed a conflict of interest. So obviously the project-based disclosures are submitted and they're tracked actually in the proposal development document. So once we route the PD for approvals, I think still everybody receives an email. So you'll receive an email that you need to review and approve the PD. But anybody who's not a PI or a co-PI, so usually key personnel, they'll also receive an email, and there should be a link in there where they can go in to the conflict of interest module and complete their disclosure. So as Courtney already showed you, when the PD is put into route, once you've reviewed the PD and you get this message that pops up at the end after you've approved, please confirm to update disclosure. So if you just click on update disclosure, this will automatically bring you to the COI module where you can go in and do your project-based disclosure. Okay, so when you click that button, again, this is the exact same screen that you were first brought to when you did your annual disclosure. This is the COI module. So instead of clicking off annual disclosure, you're going to make sure that that complete project-based disclosure button is clicked off. So I'm not sure what the default is. You know, I don't go in and do these regularly, obviously. So I know that we had some issues when this was first launched. Just, you know, try and make sure that you check that that complete project-based disclosure button is checked off. And then you just hit next. And then you'll have this section that says needs attention. So all the projects for which you need to do a project-based disclosure will be listed here. And the title of the project will be listed as well. So you should easily be able to find, you know, the project that you're trying to complete a disclosure for. And you just click the little arrow, and that expands the specific project you're completing the disclosure for. And it will ask if you have financial entities to disclose. If there's nothing to disclose, you just hit no, and then you would hit next. Okay, and then, sorry, Courtney, if you can just go back. So if you hit next here, it's the same as the annual disclosure. It's going to bring you to that certification statements page, and then you can just hit submit, and then you're all finished. And then if you do have a conflict that you need to disclose, you'll be brought to this page. I'm sorry for the fuzziness of this because I have no conflicts of interest. This is a screenshot from OSP's website. So here you would just add you see the add line button, which I've outlined here in red. So if you've already disclosed conflicts in your annual project-based disclosure, they should automatically show up here. But if you have an additional one that you need to add, you can just click that add line button and you can add any new financial entities to disclose. So once you've added everything, you would just hit next. And I should also mention there's sort of in the left column of that screenshot, that square outlined in blue, there's a little pencil there. You can go in there and make any changes. Yeah, right there. You can go in and make any changes to the entities that you've already disclosed there. So once you've done that, you just hit next. And again, those certification statements are going to pop up. So you review those. And if you agree, you just hit submit. And then you've completed your project-based disclosure. And OSP has videos with instructions on how to add or edit at the link that I've provided there. So I just wanted to give a quick note. If you do have a financial conflict of interest that you think you need to disclose, at this time, I'm just going to recommend that you complete your annual disclosure well before the proposal is due. Only because right now, currently, and I don't know if this will always be the case, but there's currently some delays in review at the COI office, and they need to review and approve your annual disclosure before the project-based disclosure can be completed. So this hasn't caused any delays in submission or anything like that. But if you have the time, just kind of to avoid the headache, it might be worth just going in and doing your annual based disclosure well ahead of time. So does anybody have any questions about the COI stuff before I just move on to the last couple slides? I don't see anything. All right. So then other CANR resources. So if you're doing any projects that involve any government representatives or stakeholders in the community. We do have a resource for that, Patrick Cudney. So if you're working with any elected or appointed officials, including U.S. senators, congressional delegation, governor's office, anything like that, you can reach out to Patrick, and he sort of serves as a liaison between MSU and these groups. So we highly recommend reaching out to him if you have any questions or if you plan on working with any government officials or stakeholders in the community. And then research evaluation and data analytics. So Dr. Jane Payumo, her email address is listed there. So she's in the office, she's in AgBioResearch, and she does a lot of monitoring and evaluation, and also does a lot of data analytics for leadership in AgBio, so monitoring success of CANR faculty based on their grants, publications, and patents metrics. And she also designs and implements the automation, the process automation, so the PI exception approval process and the FNA waiver process. She's sort of, put the automated process into place. And so she is kind of behind the scenes, helping a lot with that as well. So if some PIs have really large projects that involve and require a monitoring and evaluation component of the proposal. And so she can oftentimes provide some support there as well. So just something to keep in mind, probably not on your radar right now, but something to keep in mind for the future. And that's everything. So I'd like to thank you for your attendance and participation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Feel free to unmute yourself or put anything in the chat.